Heck, nonsense. It wakes up my brain cells. Fantasy is a necessary ingredient in living. Hi, I'm THEODORE SEUSS GEISel, or Dr. Seuss as most of you may know me. I'm a famous children's book author. Some consider me a smart person. Some consider me crazy. I agree with one of them. Being crazy isn't enough. Growing up, I loved to draw, and I drove my parents crazy with my exaggerations and rhythmic ways of speaking. I also loved books. My mother knew how much I loved books. She actually used to bribe me with books to get me to behave or do chores. I think her most of all influenced me to be the man I am today. My father, on the other hand, wanted me to be a professional marksman, you know, with the bow and arrow, but he soon realized I wasn't much of an athlete. So he set his sights on me getting a doctorate. I attended college at Dartmouth, where I spent most of my time writing for the school's humor magazine, Jacko's Humor Magazine, and playing poker with my friends. My goal was to become the editor of Jacko's my senior year. I made it such a priority that if I didn't become the editor of Jacko's, I would have considered my entire college career a complete failure. Lucky for me, I did become editor. But Easter that year, I was playing poker and drinking with my friends. Now, these were the days of Prohibition, where all consumption of alcohol was illegal. This wouldn't have been such a big deal for the dean of the school, but we got ourselves a little too rowdy and the neighbors complained. Our punishment was a call home to our parents, but this wasn't a big deal for me since my parents were former brewers. But I also wasn't able to continue being the editor of Jacko's. But I didn't give up. I kept writing for Jacko's using a pseudonym, Seuss, and added the doctor later as a joke to my father. After I graduated from Dartmouth, I went to Oxford to finish my education. I spent most of my time in class doodling, and one day, the girl sitting behind me looked over my shoulder and saw my drawing. She said, "Why are you studying to be an English professor when it's so clear you want to be an artist?" Her name was Helen Palmer. She was 5.5 years older than me, with beautiful brown hair and pale blue eyes. Well, I got smart and married that girl. Not right away, of course, but after I had a steady income. I soon got bored of school and left Oxford to travel Europe. When I got back, I moved in with my parents until I sold my first cartoon strip to the New York Post. After that, I moved in with a friend of mine in New York. What a place. I remember we used to play rat polo. By that I mean we got up on chairs and chased the rats out with canes so they wouldn't nibble us while we slept. Those were the days. It wasn't long before I was making $75 a day making news strips. At this point, I married Helen. Soon after our engagement, the stock market crash that started the Great Depression happened. This wasn't such a big deal for us because we were in the entertainment business, I guess you could call it. Like writers, actors, artists, and musicians. They weren't affected as much because they gave people entertainment to distract them from the hard times. Ironically, I wrote my first book during this time. It was called To Think I Saw It on Mulberry Street. All of my neighbors thought that it was a gossip book about them because I lived on Mulberry Street. It was actually a book about little kids who exaggerated too. It was actually a book about a little kid who exaggerates too much. What followed the Great Depression was more depression. World War II happened. I felt bad that I wasn't doing anything, so I decided to sign myself up for the Navy. While waiting for the Navy to accept me, the Army sent me a message and asked me to join them. Being the optimist I am, I accepted. There, I made educational cartoons for the Army men. After World War II, Warner Brothers came to me and asked me if I wanted to help them write and direct movies. I accepted, and I was making a lot of money, but I wasn't happy. I didn't like the strict deadlines of making a movie. I preferred the freedom and permanence of writing a book. So I went back to writing books. I wrote about a book a year, with the occasional documentary video. Then I was challenged, about 5 years ago, I was challenged by a publisher friend of mine to write a book using only 225 words. It was really hard to get started. With only that many words. But for the title, I took the first 2 words that rhymed, the cat in the hat, and that was my title. It took a very long time to finish, with a lot of with a lot of headaches, and it was finally finished. I was surprised by the overwhelming popularity of this book. After that, I wrote How the Grinch Stole Christmas. It was my first book with a strong political view about the commercialization of Christmas. It's the book I'm most proud of. Recently, I was bet $50 by my publisher friend Bennett Cerf to write a book using only 25 words. I've already finished the book. It's called Green Eggs and Ham. I was actually supposed to go to a meeting to present it today instead of coming here, but it was canceled. So we're having a dinner party at Cerf's house where I will present my book and hopefully collect my winnings. Any questions before I go?